Well, hi, this is Michaela Evans. I'm a parent educator with Kentucky Spin, and we're back today to talk about our Spotlight on Kentucky segment, and that is where we introduce some of our favorite agencies around the state working hard to serve families and individuals with disabilities. And so today I have Karen McCracken here to talk to us a little bit about First Steps and the wonderful things they do to serve our families. So Karen, do you care to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about you?
Hi, thank you, Michaela. I'm glad to be here with you. Again, my name is Karen McCracken. You probably heard that. I am the parent consultant with First Steps. I actually work for the University of Kentucky, but I am assigned with First Steps to help represent the parent voice and to help reach out to parents throughout the state. And for me personally, I'm married. I have an adopted special needs son and a stepdaughter. And so our road has been long and hard. But thankfully, I have a background and a history of working with families and children, from the Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children to working in special education in the public school system. And then I was a children and youth pastor for many, many years. So it prepared me, I think, all of these roads personally and professionally to work with First Steps.
Wonderful. And I know you kind of touched on this a little bit probably already, but do you care to share your why and why you got into the field and what keeps you here?
Now, when my son was younger, and it was a whole new world to me, even though I'd worked with families and children and I'd worked for agencies that had worked with special needs families, it was still a whole new world having a child of your own, and having to step right into advocating was a hard lesson to learn. And it's something that I am pretty passionate about, teaching other parents to advocate for their children, because I feel like a lot of parents, especially when their children are first born and they find out they have some sort of developmental delay or some sort of issue that they didn't expect to have to tackle, and some sort of challenge for the first few years of their lives, they're numb and they feel stuck. So having somebody else to rely on, and then also having somebody to teach them how to be a stronger advocate for their child, and that there are resources out there. That became something that became a passion of mine, and not just mine and my husband's. We actually both became certified family peer supports in order to help better advocate for families and children in the state, and to help people come through what we've been through. So that's really my why.
And that's so wonderful that you can bring that unique perspective to the families that you serve, because you literally have walked through what they're walking through and you've been in their shoes. I feel like that helps so much
Yes.
as a parent of a child with special needs myself, just to have somebody that understands and kind of knows exactly where you're coming from. I feel like that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So what are some of the programs and services that First Steps offer?
So First Steps is the Kentucky Early Intervention System, and we offer programs and services for families who have children aged birth to 3 years old. So when they're initially diagnosed with some sort of delay, they have an evaluation, and either the pediatrician or somebody at the school or preschool is concerned, or even a parent. A parent can refer themselves and then have their child evaluated from there. So if there's some sort of concern, they're evaluated, and then if there is a need there, whether it's a developmental delay, and that could be speech or something physical, it could be auditory, could be mental and emotional, or the child is at risk for having a delay. In other words, either they've been born with Down syndrome, or they're in their early years, they're diagnosed with autism. Then we serve those families who would like to have First Step services, and we provide services for them with things like OT, PT, mental health counselors, a service coordinator, and develop a plan not just for the child but for their family. So we don't consider the child the client, we consider the family the client, because as you know, being a parent of a child with special challenges affects the entire family. And so our goal is to reach out to families and help families, not just the children.
And what a wonderful support that is. What are some typical questions that you receive from parents or families just starting out with services and first steps?
So for those just starting out, I get a lot of parents. I think I do, as well as the service coordinator, who's the person that helps coordinate all of the services, whether the child needs speech therapy, occupational therapy, and the family needs maybe counseling or different things together. Um, the service coordinator helps with that. They might have a developmental interventionist, and also if they have questions of me and they just want to connect to another parent, I think the questions I get greater than anything else from a parent who has a newly diagnosed child or a child that is new to the program is just, how do we manage all of this? How do I manage all of these appointments? You know, they want some tips, some suggestions, some community resources as to how to handle their job and their other children, their family, their other commitments in their schedule, and implement all this at the same time and make their child a priority. And so I think a lot of it is sometimes connecting other parents with parents who've been there, done that, just like me. Sometimes they just need somebody to listen to them. Sometimes they need resources. So the questions are really just come from a place of, I'm in a little bit of a shock. Where do I go from here?
Well, that's completely understandable for them to have those questions. I'm glad they have you at First Steps to reach out to. Uh, what is something critical that you feel like families need to know right now, maybe during the pandemic, or just the way that things are changing due to telehealth appointments and all that we have going on in the world today?
I think it's really important because First Steps has always traditionally been a face-to-face in-home provider program, because we feel like supporting the family in the child's natural environment is important. I think that a lot of families have been and were immediately frightened that they wouldn't get support and they wouldn't have services because of what's been going on with the pandemic. But like many other people, we've had to step into telehealth and teleintervention because those are the guidelines. We come under the umbrella of the Department for Public Health and the community CHFS of Kentucky. So we have to follow those guidelines. So we've had to step wholeheartedly into teleintervention. And so letting families know, and that's been our quest since the pandemic started. We still provide services. Yes, they look a little different right now, but we have families who've been extremely successful with teleintervention. And so we've been able to greater implement the coaching method, which is something that families haven't been familiar with and they're getting familiar with in Kentucky, where the providers coach the families instead of the provider doing everything in a session, they teach the families how to support the child. And we have so many families who have come to us and said, I can't believe how empowered I feel because instead of just having a provider come to my home, a provider has taught me what to do in between sessions. I see more progress with my child. I feel more connected to my child. So I think just reassuring families that whether teleintervention has worked for them or not, or they're afraid to do it or not, it is there and we have not gone away. First Steps is still here to support families in the best way we can, just like everybody else, as we work through this time.
That's wonderful advice. And I encourage parents to try not to be so afraid of that telehealth component when it comes to the one-on-one therapies and services their children were providing. I was hesitant myself, but have been blown away with how much progress we have made through telehealth, and it's so much easier on me as a parent as well. So I really love that you guys have been creative and found a way to still provide those services in a way that will help, I believe, even more families and help families go even further than sometimes you can in person.
You know, I think we owe that to our coaching. We have a group of master coaches, and we owe that to, we have some amazing providers in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And our First Step providers and all of the people in our state lead agency office have worked so hard, as you all have, I'm sure, at Kentucky Spin, throughout the pandemic. And I think it's hard for parents who are stressed to see that. They just know how things are affecting them. But we have worked really hard to help support our families and our providers throughout this time.
Certainly, and I think that really shows. What do you want families that view this video to take away from this interview in terms of the message that you think First Steps would like to convey?
I think for me, from my perspective as the parent consultant, is that we are here. And if they have an issue, they can call, they can email, and we will do our very best to get with them. We do hear them. We understand where they are. We value the relationship we have with our providers and with our families. And that if there's questions, we don't know it all, but we'll do our best to figure it out and help them through it. And if I can't help them, I know how to move them on to somebody else who can help them and provide them resources. As you know, we talked before, I often refer people, especially when their kids are transitioning out of First Steps, when they hit that age 3, I transition them or help them with resources as they transition into school, into preschool, into Head Start and other programs. So we're here. I think that's the biggest message we need to let people know right now, is that we're still here and we're still serving families in Kentucky.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for joining us today on Spotlight in Kentucky. We're certainly thankful for you and all that you guys are doing all the hard work you're doing at First Steps to serve our families with disabilities.
Thank you, Michaela. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.